Perfect. Admitting all.
Shana Tova, Shabbat Shalom, and welcome. I'm so glad that all of you are here this morning. Rabbi Leora Kay tells a story about a young girl who lived in the city. Every so often, she'd get a chance to visit her grandmother. How she loved those visits. Grandma lived in a rural community filled with farms and small town charm. And when she visited, everything seemed to slow down, to pause. She felt a sense of calm. And every single time she went to visit, her grandmother would take her on a train ride, the same train at the same time. They'd sit in the same seats in the same car and look out the window as her grandmother told stories about the farms, the homes, and the places, the people who lived there, the businesses and the people who ran them. She had heard the same story visit after visit so many times that she could practically tell them herself word for word, and yet they never grew old. She looked forward to them and held on to every word. Well, one day, the train schedule changed. They got on their train and began to look out the window, but as the train began to take off, there was a problem. The trains were coming one after another in the opposite direction, blocking their view. What would they do? How could grandmother tell the stories now? The girl was getting more and more upset, longing for the stories and anecdotes that she had heard so many times before. Her grandmother watched as her anxiety began to rise. "Why don't we change seats and move to the other side of the train?" her grandmother asked. "You've heard all the stories about the places on this side of the train, but I haven't even begun to tell you the stories of the places on the other side." Today, we, like the young girl, might long for high holy days as they were. The same ambiance, service, the same greet at the door, name tags on, prayer book in hand, looking at the light pouring through our stunning stained glass windows. We might feel a bit uncertain and apprehensive about sitting on the other side of the train, about experiencing high holy days from the sacred places within our homes. But my friends, this morning we have an opportunity we have never had before, to hear new stories, to experience high holy days in a way which might surprise and inspire us in ways we hadn't known that we were missing. This morning, may we have the courage to open our hearts, to try something new, to embrace the beauty right here before us. We will be showing most of our pages of our prayer books on the screen. But if you are someone who loves the feeling of a prayer book in your hands, we encourage you to follow along. The page numbers are on the bottom right corner of every slide. This morning, we usher in a new year together. This morning, we gather to mark the start of a new year, to give gratitude for the lives with which we are blessed. May this morning, however different, be a joyous celebration.
Help me
Prayer is a step on which we rise from the self we are to the self we wish to be. Prayer affirms the hope that no reality can crush, the aspirations that can never acknowledge defeat.
Adonai Sfatai Tifach. Adonai Sfatai Tifach. Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha. Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha. Adonai Sfatai Tifach. Adonai Sfatai Tifach. Ufi Yagid Tehilatecha. Ufi Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Avraham Elohei Yitzchak v'Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rachel v'Elohei Leah האל הגדול, הגיבור והנורא, אל עליון, גומל חסדים טובים, וקונה הכל, וזוכר חסדי אבות ואימהות, ומביא גאולה לבני בניהם, למען שמו באהבה. זוכרנו לחיים, מלך חפץ בחיים, וחותרנו בספר החיים, למענך אלוהים חיים. מלך עוזר מושיע ומגן, ברוך אתה אדוני, מגן אברהם וזרעת שרה.
Untitled Chapter, the prayer that imagines God inscribing in the heavenly book who shall live and who shall die in the year to come, has become, for many, a riveting and troubling image of the High Holy Days. writes Amy Elberg. As I say its words, I remember a friend's baby that did not make it, health scares and diagnoses, lives lost far too soon. In a sense, Untitled Chapter invites the whole community into a truth which sick and grieving people live every day. Rosh Hashanah assaults the denial of the healthy, so that on this day, the ill beset with clear awareness of mortality are at one with the whole community, all of us knowing the fundamental uncertainty of life. We are made of dust, as the Untitled Chapter concludes, and to dust we return. Like clay vessels, we can break. Like flowers, we fade. And like shadows, we pass, and like a dream, we will someday pass from sight. This is the truth. And there can be comfort in standing in the sacred circle of community affirming it, at the same time committing to savor the fragile gift of life that we are given.
תינשא מלכותך וייכון בחסד כיסך ותשב עליו באמת. אמת, כי אתה הוא דיין ומוכיח אמת ויודע ועד וחותם וחותם וסופר ומונה וחותם וחותם וסופר ומונה ותזכור כל הנשכחות ותפתח את ספר הזיכרונות ומעליו יקרא וחותם מיד כל אדם בו.
Let us proclaim the power of this day, a day whose holiness awakens deepest awe and inspires highest praise for your dominion, for your throne is a throne of love. Your reign is a reign of truth. In truth, you are judge and plaintiff, counselor and witness. You inscribe and seal, you record and recount. You remember all that we have forgotten. And when you open the book of memories, it speaks for itself, for every human hand leaves its mark, an imprint like no other. On Rosh Hashanah, it is written, and on the fast of Yom Kippur, certainly not a feast, on the fast of Yom Kippur, this is sealed. How many will pass away from this world, and how many will be born into it? Who will live and who will die? Who will reach the ripeness of age and who will be taken before their time? Who by fire and who by water? Who by war and who by beast? Who by famine and who by drought? Who by earthquake and who by plague? Who by strangling and who by stoning? Who will rest and who will wander? Who will be tranquil and who will be troubled? Who will be calm and who tormented? Who who will live in poverty and who in prosperity, who will be humbled and who exalted.
Rosh Hashanah Yikatevun Uvyom Tzom Kippur Yechatemun Kama Yavrun Vechama Yibarehun Mi Yichye Umi Yamut Mi Vekitzo Umi Lo Vekitzo Mi Vaesh Umi Vamayim Mi v'cherev u'mi v'chaya mi v'rav u'mi v'tzamach mi v'rash u'mi v'magefa mi v'chanika u'mi v'skila mi yanuach u'mi yanua mi shaket u'mi yitaref mi shalev u'mi yityasar mi ani u'mi asher mi mishpol u'mi yarom.
But through return to the right path, through prayer and righteous giving, we can transcend the harshness of the decree.
Uteshuva, utefila, utsedaka, mavirim et roa hagzera.
At the end of March, I received a call from my father. He was worried about my mother's deteriorating health. She had been struggling with COVID-19 for several days, and it was clear that her condition was declining rapidly. Dad had just put my mother in an ambulance and was pacing around the house, worried about what would happen. Would she recover? If she did, would she have lasting damage? These are concerns you know all too well. So many of us have been sick or have had loved ones struggling for their lives. Some of us are mourning for those taken far too soon by this horrific disease. My family was fortunate that my mother not only survived, but she's thriving today. After a month and a half in the hospital, my mom spoke the words that I had longed to hear. They're sending me home. Nurses were to line the halls to cheer her release. She was a survivor. That Friday night, I told the cantor that I wanted to sing Kiddush, the blessing over the wine. I needed to sing a prayer of praise and raise my cup to declare l'chaim, to life. As the words ushered from my lips, it was hard to push the tears from my eyes. At a time of so much suffering, it felt good to celebrate life. 5780 was a difficult year. It was a year of earthquakes, such as the one that happened last night, of mass shootings and anti-Semitic and racist attacks. It was a year of rising homelessness throughout the streets of Los Angeles. It was a year of presidential impeachment and acquittal and rising political rhetoric in advance of a contentious election. It was a year of rising hatred, of murder hornets, of migrants being turned away or separated from family at the border. It was a year in which unarmed people of color were killed by police again and again. It was a year of protests, demonstrations, and rioting, a year in which police were targeted. A year which ended with the death of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, an icon of equality, justice, and integrity. It was a year in which nearly 1 million people worldwide died from the coronavirus. And as we speak, some of the worst wildfires in the nation's history are burning along the West Coast. On Rosh Hashanah, we are meant to celebrate a new year. But after the one we've just lived through, amidst the struggles we are currently facing, we may not feel like rejoicing. For months, we have been wandering through a desert of uncertainty. Like our ancestors who journeyed for 40 years, we find twists at every turn, unable to see through the plumes of dust, unsure of when and if we will make it to the promised land. 3 days a week, we traditionally read words of Torah. The Torah is not filled with joyful stories about what happened once we made it to the promised land. Instead, it is the story of a people trudging its way through a wilderness filled with challenge and controversy, plagues and protest, violence and hatred. It is a story of suffering, hardship, and ultimately of finding ourselves. Along the way, we receive the name Yisrael. You might recall that at a challenging moment in his life, Jacob wrestled with a divine being all night long. Jacob was hurt. His hip had been wrenched from its socket, but he held on to the divine being, saying, "I will not let go until you bless me." The being blessed him with the name Yisrael, which means he who struggles with God and has prevailed. With pride, our people took on this name of our patriarch. It is incredibly fitting. Like Jacob, we struggle. Like Jacob, we stubbornly hold on until we transform our hardship into blessing. Like Jacob, we are survivors. Suffering, as we know, is not innately noble or meaningful. Sometimes terrible things happen and we simply need to get through them. There are times, however, when, as David Brooks puts it, we can suffer our way to wisdom. Our sages explain that the wilderness was the only place where we could have received the Torah. Only in the vast expanse of the desert were we free, open, and humble enough to accept God's words. As the Talmud teaches, from the wilderness, a gift. The frightening, unrestrained desert can be the birthplace of our self-discovery and growth. In his book, The Second Mountain, David Brooks argues that everything we learn is through challenge. When you ask people what experience made them the person they are, they never say, "I was a shallow and selfish person until I went on that amazing vacation in Hawaii." No, people usually talk about moments of difficulty, struggle. As British journalist Malcolm Muggeridge put it, "Everything I have learned in my 75 years in this world, everything that has truly enhanced my existence has been through affliction." In the desert, we learn how strong we are. In the desert, we learn what really matters. Our suffering may not have meaning of its own, but we can choose to allow it to change us for the better. Over the past several months, many of us have done just that. We have reconnected with loved ones, reconciled with people from our past. We have channeled our pain, loneliness, and anxiety into compassion by taking care of people in need, by bringing people groceries, making phone calls, volunteering, and providing inspiration and support. We, like Yisrael, strive to find blessings amid our suffering. We are taught that another pandemic occurred at the time of King David. 100 people were dying every day, and King David desperately searched for a cure. Seeking comfort, he turned to the Torah. He came across a verse in Deuteronomy that reads, "Ma Adonai Elohecha shoel me'imach." What does God ask of you? The Torah is written without vowels. And as King David looked at the verse, he realized that there was another way to read it. Instead of Ma Adonai, what does God ask? He read the verse as Mea Adonai, 100 is God asking. At that moment, he knew what to do. To stop 100 people from dying a day, the people needed to start saying 100 blessings. At this moment of great desperation and hardship, this moment of significant loss and suffering, King David realized that the people needed to give thanks. It might feel counterintuitive, strange, or even tone deaf to celebrate, but their quest was apparent. They needed to count their blessings. As my friend and colleague, Rabbi Michal Loving teaches, when we bless so many times a day, for seeing a rainbow over a meal, greeting an old friend, putting on a mask, we realize the immensity of what we already have, and our gratitude overwhelms our despair. Shadows turn to light, paths that had once seemed foggy and impenetrable suddenly become clear. Nachman of Bratslav taught, joy is not incidental to our spiritual quest. It is vital. Today on Rosh Hashanah, in the midst of a pandemic, we gather to celebrate a new year. Now, our sages had been through the ups and downs of life. They understood that there might be times when rejoicing felt impossible. They insisted that we do it anyway. During a time of famine, it was okay that we didn't have a feast to celebrate. We should pick out just one beautiful fruit and give thanks. At times of economic hardship, it was okay to focus on just one holiday item and rejoice in the mitzvah of using it. If we couldn't celebrate as a community, we could break out our timbrels and celebrate individually. No matter how we do it, our tradition teaches us the importance of rejoicing. Danish philosopher Søren Kierkegaard taught, it takes moral courage to grieve. It takes religious courage to rejoice. It takes moral courage to recognize the brokenness of our world, to feel and to respond. It takes moral courage to resist putting the blankets over our heads and to sit in the vulnerability of the wilderness. We need to do that if we want to repair this world. At the same time, we need religious courage. We need to find opportunities for joy, to hold on even when we're in pain until we receive our blessing, to offer words of thanks even when we're not feeling quite so thankful, to focus on just one piece of the holiday when we can't take in it all. Psalm 100 calls us to Ivdu et Adonai b'simcha, to serve God with joy. This isn't always easy. Ivdu has the same root as avadim, slaves, teaches Rabbi Andy Berlin. It implies labor. We labor at joy. We work for it. Ivdu et Adonai b'simcha, work with God for joy. Throughout history, we have worked for joy even when it seemed impossible. During the Holocaust, Nazis looted and destroyed countless synagogues. They confiscated Torah scrolls from hundreds of congregations, hoping to one day use them in a museum as a tribute to an extinct Jewish people. It seemed that there was no room for simcha, for joy. But somehow, our people held on to hope. And somehow 1,564 scrolls became the Czech Memorial Sifrei Torah, currently housed in congregations all over the world. This morning, we will read from one of these scrolls, which emerged from a desert of cruelty and destruction, and today serves as a source of wisdom and blessing. This year, our scroll turns 130 years old. 80 years after being confiscated by the Nazis, we have the privilege of blessing it. This Torah scroll is a living reminder that we have found strength, resilience, and hope throughout many dark moments in history, and we remain strong today. On Rosh Hashanah, we celebrate. Sure, we beat our chests as we atone for our sins. The Unatana Tokef is yet another reminder of our frailty and our mortality. But ultimately, this day is about new beginnings. It's about celebrating how far we have come and all the possibilities that lay ahead. On Rosh Hashanah, we proclaim, we are here Despite it all the hardship and challenge, the frustration of technology, the months and months of preparation, we have come here today. We have adapted, we have grown, we have helped one another, and we have it in us to continue to do just that in the coming year. If that isn't worthy of celebration, I don't know what is. Our sages debated in the Torah about the best way to bring joy to our families on the festivals. New clothes, meat, and other luxuries were among the suggestions. Ultimately, they decided that the best way to celebrate was with wine. They didn't go into great detail about why they chose this blessing in particular, but I think it has something to do with the words that follow it. You see, even back then, millennia ago, our rabbis ended the Kiddush by saying l'chaim. The best way to rejoice was to celebrate our lives. 4 months ago, my mother was released from the hospital. That Friday, I lifted my glass, celebrating life in a world filled with suffering and challenge. Today, I ask you to once again say amen to my blessing, to say l'chaim, how grateful, how blessed we are to be alive today, how appreciative we are of all that is good in our lives. It is just one of our 100 blessings, but it is a start. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen, l'chaim, to life.
Amen. L'chaim, Rabbi. Hayom harat olam. Today the world is born anew. As we are yours in service, guide us by the light of your justice, grace, and holiness. And as the rabbi said, l'chaim, to life. Hayom harat olam, hayom harat olam, oh hayom harat olam, hayom yamid b'mishpat kol yetzurei olamim, im kevanim, im keavedim, im kevanim, im keavedim, oh im kevanim, im keavedim, im kevanim, rachmenu kerachem aval banim, ve'im keavedim, einenu lecha tluyot, שתכוננו ותוציא האור משפטנו היום קדוש. יאי 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 יאי
We are about to begin our shofar service, and here it's 100 calls. Rabbi Alinu teaches, when the shofar sounds 100 times, it blows open the gates of heaven. When the shofar sounds 100 times, it forms a bridge between heaven and earth, and we enter heaven on that bridge. When the shofar sounds 100 times, it cracks the shell of our awareness wide open, and suddenly we find ourselves in heaven. When the shofar sounds 100 times, we hear the voice of heaven in it. We experience revelation. The first section of our shofar service is called Malchuyot. These preliminary calls humble us, reminding us that there is so much in life beyond our control. This section of the service includes the Great Alinu. While the Alinu prayer calls us to bow at the knee, during the Great Alinu, our counter bows fully to the ground before God. It is a moment so sacred that it occurs just once a year. For years, the cantor has bowed down on his own, but this High Holy Day season is unlike all others. This year, you are invited to join with him if you feel so moved. In your own time, at your own pace, bow toward God. There is a reason that our shofar service begins with vulnerability. It allows us to focus on that which is truly significant in our lives. There is a reason that our shofar service begins with humility. It is the foundation upon which growth and inspiration can be built. Alison Choying Zangmo teaches, if we're not reflecting on the impermanent nature of life, then there is a lot of unimportant things that seem important. May the Great Alinu, the great shofar's first blasts, call us to what is truly important, so that we can rise a little stronger, a little more centered, and a little more inspired.
Alenu, Ladon hakol, latet, gedula leotzer bereshit, שלא עשנו כגויי הארצות, ולא שמענו כמשפחות האדמה, שלא שם חלקנו כהם, וגורלנו ככל המונם. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלאכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. And the blessings now for the blowing of shofar. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lishmoa kol shofar. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam שהחיינו וקיימנו והגיענו לזמן הזה.
And we continue with our second part of our shofar service, Zichronot. May God remember us, not only for our mistakes, but for our good intentions and our tender hearts. Remember, our ancestors for thousands of years have asked forgiveness with the wail of the ram's horn. Today, again, we open ourselves to the calls of the shofar, reminding us sleepers, awake. We remember what matters most in our lives. Help us shed old memories which no longer serve us. Help us instead to always remember you.
Tekiah, Shivarim Teruah, Tekiah, Tekiah, Shivarim, Tekiah, Tekiah, Teruah, Tekiah.
Thank you, Maxine. Our final section in our shofar service is that of shofarot. It is a call for action and a call for hope. After accepting our vulnerability, after mindfully focusing on that which we wish to remember, we are called to pray with our feet, to move from inward inspiration to outward action. The jarring blasts of the shofar are a spiritual alarm clock, stirring the soul from its slumber, explains Rabbi Sharon Brous, testifying to the spiritual promise of the holy days. Everything is possible. Things don't have to be as they are. We don't have to be as we are. This moral awakening is the essential first step in the process of transformation of both personal and societal. If we take this moment seriously, we can reframe, repair, and redirect the contours of our relationships and our lives. The shofar reminds us that we may be humble beings, but our lives can make an enormous impact. As the shofar's call echoes into the great expanse, so too our actions may have ripple effects beyond what we will ever know. The shofar inspires us to dream big about our future and to vow to do our part to make that future a reality. It is the sound of hope, the sound of joy, the sound of life being lived to its fullest potential.
Tekiah, Shvarim Teruah, Tekiah, Tekiah, Shvarim, Tekiah, Tekiah, Teruah, Tekiah Gedolah.
Three incredible shofar blowers. Thank you all so much. After a long illness, I was permitted for the first time to step outdoors. And as I crossed the threshold, sunlight greeted me. So long as I live, I shall never forget that moment. And everywhere in the firmament above me, in the great vaults between earth and sky, on the pavements, the buildings, the golden glow of sunlight, it touched me too with friendship, with warmth, with blessing. And I remembered how often I had been indifferent to the sunlight, how often preoccupied with petty and sometimes mean concerns, I had disregarded it. And I said to myself, how precious is the sunlight, but alas, how careless of it we are. Source of blessing, may we open our eyes to the radiance around us. May we open our hearts with gratitude and our souls with appreciation. In a world filled with so much loss, we come together today to rejoice in life. This moment, we include in our liturgy a prayer that dates back to the Talmud over 1,600 years ago. A prayer we do not use nearly often enough. That prayer is called Birhat Hagomel. It is recited by individuals who survive life-threatening circumstances, such as a dangerous travel, severe illness, or incarceration. Our sages implore us to celebrate every victory and to take every opportunity to count our blessings. So this morning, I will call upon anyone and everyone who has survived something life-threatening in this past year. Perhaps you were sick with COVID-19 and recovered. Perhaps you had another severe illness, had to travel amidst a sea of masks and uncertainty. Perhaps you work in the medical field and put yourself in harm's way for the well-being of others. Perhaps you are an essential worker forced to take risks to do your job. This prayer is for you. It is a celebration that despite it all, you are well enough to be here today, welcoming in a new year. If this pandemic is teaching us anything, it is that we can't rationally take anything for granted. Every day, every moment, every recovery is worth celebration. So I invite all people who feel moved to say these words to join with me first in the Hebrew and then in the English, saying Birhat Hagomel. You should be able to unmute yourself at this time. If you are able to do so, and please join with me. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Hagomel hachavim tovim Igmalani Kol Tov. Blessed are you, God eternal, your majesty fills the universe.
I have experienced your goodness.
And the next slide is one for the entire congregation to say in response of gratitude that everyone is here today. Amen.
Amen.
Selah.
May the source of goodness bring you
all times.
And together let us all say, Amen.
Amen.
What a wonderful celebration of life that every single one of us, despite everything, are here today to celebrate. We are going to mute everyone once more just to make sure that the sound is optimal for our service, but it gives... However, the cantor muted me. Thank you. So it gives me so much pleasure to bring Barry Gross's video. I asked Barry if he would give our appeal speech this year. Barry is just a mensch of mensches, and he's been the part of the community for so long. It gives me great pleasure to share his words with you right now. Just give us 1 second. We'll get the sound going just momentarily. Hold on. We're working on it right now. Don't worry. So if anything, this pandemic has taught us that sometimes we have to roll with the punches and sometimes things don't work out as planned, but we will get it. We will get it going in just a second. There was just a problem with muting and unmuting. One more moment. In March, we are almost there, everyone, I promise.
Shana Tova. When Rabbi called me a few weeks ago and asked me if I would be willing to give the appeal this year, it was a very quick answer, yes. My first thoughts turned to our temple, and I began thinking about my family's 40-plus years as temple members and remembering Diane and my first encounter with TBE. It was in July, a long time ago, and we were living in Torrance, belonging to another synagogue about 3 minutes from our home. During this time, we started hearing about this temple in San Pedro, about 30 minutes further from our home, but we heard about this very unique rabbi. So one Friday night, we decided to attend his service, and when we arrived, we were welcomed, but we also found out that this is the time the rabbi is on vacation. Well, we decided to stay anyways. We enjoyed the service, and we were truly overwhelmed as the cantor Ellen, was in charge, and we were hooked. Later in the summer, we returned for a service conducted by Rabbi Lieb, and the rest is history. Our daughters began Torah school that year on Sundays, became bat mitzvah, attended confirmation, and through the years, as most of you, all of our life cycle events were organized and officiated by our clergy. Let me share just a few examples of our life at TBE that has made lasting effect on me. As I mentioned, we were thrilled when Tina became a bat mitzvah at TBE, and 2 years later, we were able to join Rabbi Lieb on one of his trips to Israel. It was when Carrie and Ronit became bat mitzvah, as we all observed them, and at the same time had a spectacular view of the old city. I realize that I really don't have the words to describe that afternoon. We have been privileged, like many of you, to have 4 generations involved in our temple, and I remember watching Tina, Carrie, and later our grandsons sitting on the floor at the bottom of the bima, watching George blow his beautiful shofar. These are just a couple examples of the many of the caring and love expressed by our temple family. Now, my friends, here we are. 2020 has been and continues to be a year you and I never imagined we would be experiencing. The challenges and tragedies of this year for me, and I'm sure for you, are just unimaginable. Even when we try to cope with all the things we are experiencing this year, as in life itself, there seems to be something that helps stay and keep us balanced and allows us to get up each day and live our life the best we can. My sincere belief that at times there is divine intervention, and I believe that Rabbi Cassie and her family coming to us at that specific moment was no accident. Just moving, getting used to Southern California, getting used to us and our temple is more than enough. But that wasn't enough. The coronavirus hit like a sledgehammer and continues out of control today. Rabbi Cassie and Cantor Elon accepted the challenges presented and amazingly began to put together programs, activities, and brought them into our homes almost immediately. I have no idea where they got their energy, patience, perseverance, and will to be with us seemingly almost daily. They made sure we are okay then and now, and brought with them an understanding of where we are, beautiful music, making Torah passages come alive, coordinating and developing activities that met our needs when we were and continue to be basically at home. For me, most importantly, they brought their smiles and a gift that will be okay if we just hang together. When we hear Rabbi and Cantor sing together, if that doesn't create chills, or when Talia wraps her arms around Rabbi's neck when she is singing or talking to us, Cantor brings his beautiful voice and the voices of his daughters and other cantors from the greater LA area just for us. Truly just amazing. And doing all of this and still have the responsibilities of their families. Truly unbelievable. Let's not forget to say thank you to Jody and Josh for taking care of things at home so our professionals could be with us. How about a special thank you to Carrie and Shoni for taking care of all of us from their homes as they continue to meet all of our needs in a supportive and positive way. Thank you to Adam and Ron for keeping our temple clean and in working order, anticipating our return. Thank you to Gail and Eric and their board of directors for guiding us through the first half of this journey. And thank you to Marla and Linda and their board of directors for stepping up with continued guidance and love. Well, my friends, I probably have gone on too long, but these have been my thoughts for quite a few weeks. And now I think it is our time to show our appreciation. Let me be clear. I truly understand that these unusual and challenging times have impacted you and your family financially. But if you have the means, this is our time, maybe the most critical time in our temple's history, to reflect on what the temple means to you and support the temple's financial needs the best you can. To make a pledge, you can mail to finance@bethelSP.org or Venmo your donation to Temple El San Pedro. Please see the chat or video comments for more information. Hopefully, in the near future, we will be together again to shake hands, to hug, and kiss each other again in the beauty of our sanctuary. Shana Tova.
Shana Tova, and thank you so much, Barry, for your beautiful words. We turn now as we come towards the end of our service and offer these words. If some messenger were to come to us with the offer that death should be overthrown, with the one inseparable condition that birth should also cease, if the existing generation were given the chance to live forever, but on the clear understanding that never again would there be a child, a youth, or first love, never again new persons with new hopes, new ideas, new achievements, ourselves for always and never any others, could the answer be in doubt? When we fear death's decree, let this bring us solace. The memory of loved ones who have gone before us, a vision of generations to come, through whom we reach far into the future beyond our own lives. Alas for them that never sing, but die with all their music in them. Let us treasure the time we have and resolve to use it well, counting each moment precious, a chance to apprehend some truth, to experience some beauty, to conquer some evil, to ease some suffering, to love and be loved, to achieve something of lasting worth. There is promise within each of us that only we can fulfill. Let us live our days so that someday it will be true to say of us, the world was a little better because for just one moment they lived in it. As we prepare to say the words of the mourner's Kaddish, we think about people in our community, our loved ones who have died very recently. We think of Stanley Schneider, Ray Murphy's uncle, Elizabeth Benz, family member Alan Binstein, and Bonnie Leopold's good friend, Alan Binstein, Reva Skoll's brother, and Elizabeth Benz, Bonnie Leopold's good friend. We're also observing the yahrzeits of Carl Astheimer, Joseph Bazerman, William Ben Berg, Kalman Bernstein, Robert Botek, Rita Burrock, Anne Danye, Clara Feldstein, Maxima Flores, Vivian Gabin, Joralia Lynn Garrell, Sarah Glassman, David Grossberg, Dorothy Grossman, Yahaskel Hoffman, Dorothy Hochman, Adam Horowitz, Shirley Johnson, Abe Kasten, Irving Kritz, Ida Lane, Sylvia Leibowitz, Jerome Lewin, Josa Lupino, Miriam Mathlas, Phyllis Maurer, Francis Michaels, Max Miller, James Neely, Samuel Nussbaum, Rose Penner, Marvin Rosenfeld, Claudie Rubin, Jill Schechter, Leonard Schneider, Flora Schneer, Haris Seelig, Elizabeth Simon, Harry Sugarman, Sheila Weiss, Arthur Whale Jr., and Luis Zimmerman and Morris Zunkin. In addition, I invite you to write the names of everyone we are remembering into the chat as we offer these words of the mourner's Kaddish all together. Yit Gadal, V'yit Kadash Shemei Rabbah, Be'alma Divrach Cherotei, Ve'amlich Malchotei, B'chayachon V'yomachon Uv'chayei Dekol Beit Yisrael, Ba'gala U'bizman Kariv V'imru Amen. Yehi Shmei Rabbah, Mevrach Le'olam Olamei Almaya, Yitbarach V'yishtabach, V'yitpa'ar V'yitramam V'yitnaseh, V'yitadar V'yitalev V'yitalal Shemei Dekudesha Barichu, Le'ela U'le'ela Michol Birchata V'shiratecha, Tushbachata V'nechamata, Damiram Ve'alma V'imru Amen. Yehi Shlama Rabbah Min Shemaya, V'chayim Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael V'imru Amen. Oseh Shalom B'mromav, Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu Ve'al Kol Yisrael Ve'al Kol Yoshvei Tevel V'imru Amen. Zichronam Livracha, may all of their memories be a blessing. Amen, indeed. These are a few of our upcoming services. We are going to leave this room open for everyone who would like to stay in, and we're going to unmute everyone and simply let you say Shana Tova to one another. And then at 11:30, we'll mute everyone once more so that we can take part in our Torah service. At 1:30 today, come back for our service for families with children, although everyone is more than welcome and invited to be there. And then at 6 p.m. tonight, we have our Rosh Hashanah Seder for the first time, and I so hope you'll go. It's going to be really, really beautiful. Thank you all for being here. Shana Tova. I look forward to seeing you in some of our other services coming up.